My name is Bill Easterly, Professor of Economics at NYU, Co-Director of the Development Research Institute. This conference is titled Beyond the Nation State: How Traders, Migrants, and Ethnic Networks Are Driving Economic Growth in the Developing World. I think most people think about poverty and wealth and development as something that happens to nations, that there are poor nations and rich nations, and that the things that national leaders are doing to make their nations poor or rich. And we're really challenging that whole mindset and saying that's really a misguided way of thinking about development.
So if you watch my talk, you will hear a bit about the history of Africa, the history of the introduction of the mobile phones into Africa. You hear about some economics about how we measure the impact of Africa, and you hear about some of the cool apps on the mobile phone that are helping the poorest members of African society, the farmers in particular.
What our research is showing that perhaps the ability of a particular country to influence its exports is exaggerated, and that instead of being forced to choose something, the country needs to specialize from above. Maybe what you need is actually to create an environment where a lot of adjustment can actually happen smoothly with little friction.
We look at the effect, the general effect of cross-border banking and the effect that cross-border banks from other developing emerging markets have. We found some very interesting differences across these types of cross-border banks, specifically their sensitivity to legal system efficiency, where foreign banks in general need the legal system, but banks from other developing emerging markets rely much less on that.
My talk is trying to identify what were some of the elements of socio-economic mobility of one particular clan from China, Fujian, and trying to see how it was mainly derived from social-religious traits that might not be necessarily due to doctrinal Confucianism.
I specialize in a community of followers of mystical Islam that is called the MURID. And what really makes this group particularly interesting is that they are very much drawn to migration, and they form a large international network of traders which are found not only across West and Equatorial Africa, but also in the Western world.
Unfortunately, today the literature in sociology, economics, simply focus on the US and Europe to study social mobility, because we want to understand whether you have rising inequality, declining inequality, whether US is still the land of opportunity, and so on. But development debate, it should be about social mobility. And the way you see the progress is in the eyes of the children who are doing better than we are.
The question that we ask in this paper is whether your occupational specialization of your great-great-grandparents matter for your economic outcomes today. The answer is matter quite a bit, and we find that cultural explanation as well as a political explanation are part of the story.
The overall economic effects of migration have been very little studied, but you might be surprised to learn how big they are. There's a substantial body of literature suggesting that freer mobility of workers between countries could more than double the GDP of the world.
There's a lot of bottom-up development that is happening from families, from ethnic groups, from migrants, from people who move across the borders of nations, beyond the borders of nations, and achieve a lot of prosperity by moving, by setting up long-distance diaspora networks. And we have a whole set of papers in this conference that really dramatize that over and over again. And that's really the interesting dimension in development today, is beyond borders, across borders, beyond the nation state.